Yeah, because of Josh. I know, I'm bummed too. A lot of people, he's really sharp guy, hardworking. It's a bummer. I tried to and offered him more money, but he had already decided he wants to do something new. So Josh has been telling him for a long time about how he doesn't have to do anything.
Everyone make notes.
That's got to be a draw.
This whole thing is killing everything.
I finally got it. I finally got my contract.
All right, we'd like to welcome everyone to our Cache County Council meeting. Today is Tuesday, June 14th, 2022, and we will begin our meeting with an opening from Councilwoman Gina Worthen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Since today is June 14th, Flag Day, I thought it would be appropriate to recognize the flag, and since we have recently had a flag ceremony, I didn't arrange for that, although that would have been great to have. So instead, I've just got a few remarks. So we have a beautiful flag, don't we? What makes our flag so beautiful? In your mind's eye, picture your favorite images with Old Glory. Maybe it's the U.S. Marines huddled close together, reaching to raise her on a flagpole following a battle at Iwo Jima during World War II. Or, similarly, 3 New York firefighters pulling a cord to raise her at Ground Zero on 9/11. Or Francis Scott Key scanning the early morning light to see if she still flew over Fort McHenry. She was there. Or other images like astronauts proudly displaying her after landing on the moon, civil rights leaders and suffragettes marching with her in parades. She's draped the caskets of presidents, as well as servicemen and women who have given their last full measure of devotion. She watches over us here tonight, behind us, a constant reminder. A constant reminder of our duty, a symbol of our cherished freedom, of who we are as Americans, and the great things that America can be. That is why she's so beautiful. She is what we make her. She is, after all, a piece of cloth, gleaming brightly in the sun. But she represents the hopes and dreams of generations yearning for freedom and the best that is in each of us. One of America's favorite songs, which is traditionally played on the 4th of July, celebrates her beauty. The Stars and Stripes Forever by John Philip Sousa was written in 1896 on a return voyage to the United States after he had been on a trip to Europe. That song, once completed, was so popular, he played it nearly every concert until his death 35 years later. And then, of course, later it became our national march. Not only is the music wonderful, but the lyrics are too. Let martial note in triumph float, and liberty extend its mighty hand. A flag appears mid thunderous cheers, the banner of the western land. The emblem of the brave and true, its folds protect no tyrant crew. The red and white and starry blue is freedom's shield and hope. Other nations may deem their flags the best and cheer them with fervid elation, but the flag of the North and South and West is the flag of flags, the flag of freedom's nation. Hurrah for the flag of the free. May it wave as our standard forever, the gem of the land and the sea, the banner of the right. Let despots remember the day when our fathers, with mighty endeavor, proclaimed as they marched to the fray, that by their might and by their right, it waves forever. I'd like to continue my remarks in the form of a prayer. Our Father in heaven, we are grateful that we have the freedom to meet together, to serve as members of this county council and work to make our community better and to protect the rights and freedoms of our neighbors in this county. We are so grateful for the moisture that we've received and pray again that thy hand would bless us with the moisture to fill our reservoirs and the groundwater that we so desperately need. Please bless us that as a council we can make wise decisions, think through actions that we take and the effect that they will have. We ask thee for these blessings this day in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Please stand me and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Worthen. That was beautiful. It's great to remember the flag. And I forgot to welcome everyone here and welcome those who are watching us on YouTube also. All right. Has everybody had a chance to review and look at the agenda?
Move to approve the agenda.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Okay, has everybody had a chance to review the minutes from May 24th, 3 weeks ago?
I have a question on the minutes.
Okay.
It says that we adjourned at 7:30. I distinctly remember it being earlier and wondered if anyone remembered what time we adjourned.
Oh, good question.
Because that goes to the record for your short meeting.
Almost like record setting, wasn't it?
I think it was about 6:30.
I don't think it was 6:30.
Because it says the last comment was at 1:07, an hour and 7 minutes in. So,
That's a good question.
Who was talking at that time? Was it blowhard or was it?
it was Barbara.
Oh, it wasn't.
blowhard.
It was not a blowhard.
So it didn't go on and on.
Written minutes are shorter.
I don't know.
I don't know either.
Should we amend it to 6:10? 6:15? 6:15?
Any other offers?
I know, going once.
I think what we ought to make a thing that whoever holds the record for the shortest minute, the shortest meeting, should bring donuts the next meeting. That'll start to put a little more
Give them a
interesting.
reward. We need to bring them donuts for everybody.
Either way,
Then move to approve the minutes
The amendment
with the
of
amended end time.
6:15. I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we amend the minutes of the ending of the meeting to 6:15. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you. All right, Executive David Zook, you have a report for us.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's been a busy past couple of weeks. I've sent you most of the items in my weekly report to you, but just a couple of items I'll point out. We had a discussion about our suicide prevention concert. We had to change the date on that because of Alex Boyer's schedule, and we're looking at August 22nd now, and that'll be over at the fairgrounds again. Just want to thank everybody who's helped with that. We had Suicide Prevention Coalition meeting also, and the coalition provided a training for faith leaders to help them improve their skills for dealing with suicidality. Representative Blakemore's been up here a couple times in the last couple of weeks, so I appreciate him taking the time to come up here. We had an airport meeting, but Lee's here today, so he'll give you a report on everything that's going on there. Had some pretty good tours of receiving centers down on the Wasatch Front. Really recommend, there was a lot of discussion today about that. I would really recommend the council take the time to go tour some receiving centers down on the Wasatch Front. There's one having a grand opening this Friday if you'd like to go see that one in American Fork, and get you the information if you'd like it. The senior center, I met with them recently. They're having some issues with their budget, specifically in relation to their Meals on Wheels program and their congregate meal program. A lot of increasing demand. I'm working with them to try to identify funding, but just want you to have a heads up that they are having some shortfalls based on the increasing demand. and they may be coming to you for help in the budget with that. The Imagine Cash Steering Committee had their final meeting, and we have a general plan draft. Lauren actually is here today. She'll give you more information about that. The Fair Committee is working very hard toward our upcoming county fair. It's going to be August 10th through 13th. I can't believe it's going to be here very soon, but it's coming up. Just want to thank everybody who's working on that committee and helping prepare that great event. We had a good compensation committee meeting, and a couple of the items from that meeting are actually on the agenda tonight. So thank you, Amy, and the HR department for working so hard on those items. Housing Crisis Task Force is finishing up their plan. They're going to deliver that to me next week. Well, their recommendations, their report, not necessarily a plan, it's just a report of recommendations. So they'll be giving that to me next week, and I look forward to sharing that with you as well.
Executive, on that, have you talked to anybody from USU and the housing shortage for the students up there?
Yeah, there are actually a couple of the members of the task force who are from the university, including the person who oversees the student housing, and we have a university student who lives in student housing as a rep as well.
Thank you.
Great question. The Cheese and Dairy Festival also had a kickoff committee meeting, planning for that second annual event. It's going to be September 30th and October 1st this year, so if you want to mark that on your calendar. I had a great meeting with Mayor Daines recently. We talked about a number of issues, including downtown development, recreation needs in the county. We talked about mental health needs, and we talked about the ongoing solid waste issue, and I think we've made some good progress on that. We also had a meeting yesterday afternoon here in this room with the Mayor's Association met here, and our county attorney, John Luthi, presented to them the proposed interlocal agreement. They gave some feedback, and they're going to continue working on that. They're also pretty close to issuing an RFP to see what it would cost to hire a private provider for solid waste collection. I had a meeting with Just Serve end of last week, and they are working to increase the number of people volunteering in our community, looking for opportunities for people to volunteer, and they were asking for specifically the county to help them identify opportunities for service. So if you're aware of any opportunities in the community where service is needed, volunteers are needed, Just Serve would love to hear about it. Our event center, I mentioned a couple of events at our event center, but it's definitely the busy season for our event center. We have Summerfest kicking off this week over there. Next week will be the MS 150, and then the week after that is the cruise-in. So it's a really busy time for our staff over there, and just want to express my appreciation for them for how hard they're working now and going to continue to work throughout the summer. And that concludes my report. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you, Executive Zook. Very good. All right, moving on to items of special interest, we have an open space survey report from Mr. Jack Draxler. We're going to give you about 10 minutes for that, Jack. And if you don't take all that time, that's good too.
Well, thank you. Again, I appreciate the time of the council. And as promised, we're back with reporting to you the results of a survey that's been done countywide regarding the interest of people in preserving open space, and also the cost to them regarding what that might be. And so we have a presentation. I have Steve Daniels with me here, who's been working with our group. Steve is from Hyde Park. And we really regret that Eric Elison, who was really the brains behind our survey, came up sick this morning and can't be here. I think he's joining us virtually though. But he has put hours and days and weeks into this survey. But we were really pleased with this survey because it was a random survey of voters, scientifically done. And I'm going to have Steve walk you through it, and then if you have any questions after that, we'd be glad to discuss those in the amount of time we've been given. And then I'll give each of you a hard copy of the presentation that you can look through in greater detail after that. Well, Steve?
Thank you, Jack and Madam Chairwoman. I need to warn you all that I'm a retired professor with 33 years, so that means that if you give me a microphone, I'm good for 50 minutes. But I will go quite quickly, and anything that I skip over or am not clear about, please reference the hard copy that Jack will hand out. We really had two goals with this survey. One is to identify what were open space is such a broad term, what were the specific conservation values that people cared about? How should this program be structured? What should it focus on? And then the second one is, so what size of a bond measure might be palatable to people? What might our number be? So those are our two goals in doing the survey. In terms of diving down into methodology, we relied on another retired university professor, a guy by the name of Richard Kranick, who's a nationally known expert in community sociology and has done years of surveys. And he lives down in Paradise and helped us with our design to a considerable extent because we wanted to have as much statistical validity as possible. So we limited the survey participation to a random sample of voters. So if people got the survey and found out about it and filled it out, we segregated those results away. So this is truly a random sample.
If there were voluntary participants who found out about the survey and went on and took it, they have not been included in this because they may have been self-motivated in a certain way, and we wanted to keep it scientific.
Yeah. Our total sample was 1,000 voters, but a portion of those names were no longer active in some form or fashion. Phone numbers changed or something. The sample was also stratified across the county, so there are survey respondents from every community and unincorporated areas throughout the county. So it's not just one locale. We did a variety of ways to solicit their responses. We sent emails, we texted people. We ended up getting the great majority of them by going by and knocking on people's doors, because that's the way that people respond. And so probably, I don't know precisely, but perhaps 70% were direct contact interview submissions on the thing. Out of that, we got somewhere around a 20% response rate, given our number of active participant names. And we've calculated margins of error, and they range from 4.5% to 6.5%, which Professor Kranick says is comparable to the kinds of things you get off of Dan Jones survey these days. So there is a confidence building level of validity to the methodology that we used. So getting into results, we asked people how important a set of issues were to them in Cache County, and we had them score it on a 1 to 10 scale. So 1 is, it is not important to me at all. 10, it is extremely important. These 3 that you see up there are preserving agricultural open space in different locales. So 1 is South Gateway, sort of the slope down past the Wellsvilles. The North Gateway is Richmond area, some kind of south of Franklin. And then agricultural land sort of in non-gateway areas. You will look at those three bar charts and you'll see they are very, very similar to one another. And they are very, very high. In all cases, over 70% of the people said it was very important, scored it either 8 to 10. So it's a very salient issue for people. The averages are statistically insignificantly different from one another. They're all about 8.3. So there's no statistical difference between those averages. The median value was a 9. Preserving agricultural open space is very important to people. Well, let's look at scenic vistas and trails, trail connections, and facilities. Those are almost identical, in fact, a squidge higher, but statistically exactly the same. They're very important to people. If you look at vistas and the number of people who scored it a 10 is just, every time I would go and knock on a door in Hyde Park and people would give these numbers again and again and again, I was just astounded. I kept pounding on the door saying, well, maybe this will be the grump. And I never did find the grump. And we never did in our entire sample find the person who said, none of this is above a 3 for me. What about open space around waterways or where it provides wildlife habitat? Again, remarkably strong. 90% felt preserving open space around waterways was very important, and 85% said wildlife habitat. A high degree of consistency in these values. So we jump to the next question. Said, all right, given that you've answered those things, what would you be willing to pay for a bond? And we said, you can pay 0. So that was, I'm not going to support it at all. That was absolutely there. They weren't forced into choosing a number above 0. Or it was $20 per year, $30 a year, $40 a year, $50 a year, or $60 a year. And the survey responses came back with that kind of a distribution.
Question on that.
Yes, ma'am.
Where did you take this survey? Was it just in Hyde Park?
No, it was countywide.
It was countywide.
It was
It was
countywide.
random countywide. It included every community, you know, with a random sampling of registered voters.
Okay.
So I did Hyde Park. I got about a dozen responses. Eric Eelson did Logan, all over Logan. He got like 55 responses. We have responses from Young Ward and Minden and Richmond and almost everywhere.
Thank you, because I guess the underlying question I was thinking of is, were certain economic areas, was it evenly spread through different economic areas, you know, of who could afford to pay?
Yeah, because it was randomized, our assumption, you know how surveys are, but because it was randomized, we feel like we had a pretty good cross-section economically.
Perfect.
Good question, though. Thanks, Gene.
If the voters are not distributed across what you're talking about, then there might be an issue. But given that we went on voters, and I assume that voters are from all socioeconomic strata, I don't think we hit one more than another. In terms of what people would be willing to pay, 68% responded that they would pay $30 or more. 90%, 89% said that they would do $20 or more.
That's per year.
Per year.
Not per month.
And the average value was just a little bit over $38. And the median value is 40. So if you look at those kinds of numbers, say $30, $32, $35 a year, that would allow us to fund at current interest rates a $20 to $25 million 20-year bond. And some of the people that we talked to said, well, it's too late. You won't have enough money. You won't make a difference. And so we want to show you just a very simple example of how that money might be allocated. If you looked at a piece of property and you saw its appraised value was $2 million, you could say, you can only do 10. 10 $2 million projects will eat up your $20 million bond. That's not the scale. But if you structured it differently and went more along the lines of a conservation easement, it is typical on something like that 25% be a landowner contribution. There could be a like amount from Lee Ray McAllister funds through the state. Depending upon the conservation values, the feds might chip in 50%. But then there would be another 10% of due diligence costs. If this bond measure was able to cover just that 10%, that leverages your money 10 to 1. And so instead of doing 20 projects with this money, or 10 projects with this money, you could do 10 times that much, 100 projects. That, I think, would start to make a difference in the footprint of development around the county. So it really is a function of how the money can be leveraged through the administration of the program. So, next steps, where do we go from here? I turn it back to Jack to cover that.
So again, we appreciate your time. First of all, in a minute, I'll see if there are any questions right now. We would like to offer ourselves to be available for a workshop, if that's something that you thought was appropriate. Frankly, we've been pretty surprised at the response. We knew that there was quite a bit of concern in the valley regarding the pace of development. We want to stress that we are not pitching this as anti-development. In fact, I'll be giving you a list of the people who participated on our little ad hoc committee. We've had developers, realtors, builders, people from every walk of life who've been participating. We know that we can do both, and we have to. We need to grow, and we will grow, and there's a critical need regarding affordable housing. And but we know that we can do both. We can pass a bond and begin preserving some critical open space and have appropriate development. And we certainly don't want to feel like we're pitting open space versus development. The other thing is this survey was not a push-pull in any way. If you've gone on and looked at the survey at cashopenspace.org, it's very objective. It gives people the opportunity to say not only no, but heck no, if that's what they want to say. But it also has that scale of 1 to 10. Do you have any questions?
Jack, you said there were some people's responses that were not included. How did those differ from the ones that were included?
They would have been even more positive in favor of open space, because typically the self-identifiers saw this and said, oh, wow, I'm really big on open space. And so we felt that would skew it too much. Well, we didn't want it to skew it at all. We wanted a completely scientific survey. So that's why we excluded them. And we have the results of the non-scientific ones if you want it, but we just felt like we wanted to stick to the more rigorous survey. So, based on the results of the survey, we would want to come to the council at some point and see if you'd be willing to place an issue on the ballot in November to give the citizens the opportunity to say yay or nay regarding a bond issue. We are not asking you to raise taxes. We're only asking you to place an issue on the ballot and see if the citizens are interested in and willing to support such a measure.
If I might chime in, Eric is in fact watching.
Yeah.
And he has given an answer to your question about the self-involved respondents, and his answer was about 1 point higher each.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thanks,
And
Eric.
again, we really thank Eric for the hours and days and weeks he spent on this survey. If there aren't any further questions, we'll leave it up to you. We like I say, we'd love to have a workshop with you if that's what you'd like. And I'm going to give each one of you.
Jack, I'd like to make a comment. As you were starting out with your presentation, you were mentioning how would you, et cetera, and I thought, well, every time I've ever seen these surveys, it's always positive until you ask them how much they're willing to pay. Right. And so in the back of my mind, I was saying, okay, now, if you would have asked them in the same survey how much would have they been willing to pay, would have it changed? And I was surprised that even when you asked them what they were willing to pay, it was better than what it has been in the past.
Frankly, I was surprised too.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's where the rubber meets the road.
Yeah, you can all vote that you want open space, but nobody wants to pay for it.
And I had one person who said to me, I mean, he literally rated every different kind of open space as a 10. But then when the question was asked, what would you be willing to pay? He said, nothing.
Yeah.
Zero.
That's usually the way it is.
But he said, nope, my taxes are high enough, I don't want to increase them by a penny. And you guys know how that works.
I got one, yeah.
Thanks, Jack.
All right, are there any more questions, comments? Okay, thank you, Jack, and what was? Steve, thank you, Steve. Appreciate that. It is 5:30, so we need to go into the public hearing portion of our agenda. And we're looking to set a public hearing for June 28th at 6:00 p.m., Resolution 2022-17, a resolution amending the 2022 Cache County budget.
Move to set the public hearing for June 28th, 2022 at 6 for the resolution 2022-17.
And I'd be happy to second that, but I just want to ask the county attorney 3 clarifying questions. Because as we get ready for this budget opening, I think there's going to be some things that I didn't understand as a council member, and I want to make sure all the council member understand. So the first question I have for the county attorney, and I'll give an example. The council has allocated money for a lobbying contract and for a auditing contract in our professional and technical services budget. And that's an expenditure line item. But as I understand what you've told me, we don't have to spend that money on an auditing contract or on an lobbying contract. We can actually spend that money on new chairs because we've decided these chairs need to be different. Is that correct?
It's legal.
It's legal.
That is my opinion.
So we can do that. You would say that a department can do that. We can allocate money for a specific purpose to a specific expenditure account, but that department can spend it somewhere else.
The way you've said it is not quite the way that I interpret it. It's that under the state code, or and I forget the name of the act, but budgeting for counties, as I've read that and I've been asked to give a written opinion, which I hope to have out by June 28th, that the council budgets according to each account, which is, that's the statutory term is account, which equates to each department the way we typically use that. And so it's not that the council is allocating in more detail. The council is being told that here's our intent in much more detail, but that the budget number is a number that is the budget for an overall number for the department, who then legally can spend it other than as they said they intended to, and then they'd have to come back and report that. But yes, that's my legal opinion after considerable research and investigation.
Question number 2. Then, if we allocate money to departments, and I'll give a specific example. Let's say the sheriff is short $200,000 in building the pet jail, as Gordon calls it. And he decides that instead of coming to the council for that additional $200,000, he goes to the assessor's office and says, Miss Assessor, I'm short $200,000. Would you pay this invoice for me? And she agrees to do that. That is a legal transaction. That is not a transaction. The assessor has the discretion in her budget to pay for an invoice incurred by the sheriff.
I'm going to answer the question a little differently than you asked it. That there is no transfer, in that scenario, no transfer of funds happened between the sheriff's department and the assessor's office.
And because there's no transfer, it didn't need to come before the council.
There is not a statute or ordinance of the county that would require that to come before the council. That being said, that does not mean that there could and wouldn't be significant negative ramifications to the sheriff or the assessor if it happens. The ramifications and the possibility of it does not mean it's illegal.
Okay. And then question number 3. This is a pretty, would you agree that this is a pretty significant divergence from precedent and the way that we've handled this in the past as a county.
You know, I've not been here, I've been the county attorney for almost a year, so I can't speak to everything. But I know that there is a county ordinance. I've been asked to write a legal opinion on this as well. There is a county ordinance that has been followed for years that frankly, my legal analysis says it's an invalid county ordinance, but it's been followed.
Okay. With those three questions, so that everyone understands that situation, I would second that we set the public hearing for June 28th, 2022 at 6 p.m., Resolution 2022-17.
I
Okay.
guess I have to ask a question. If that is true, why are we doing a budget opening? I don't understand. It sounds like it's not necessary, that they can just loan each other money and use the money, you know, in their budgets for whatever they want, unless we're going to give more money to a specific department. I guess I don't understand what we need this budget opening for. Can you help me understand that?
I have not looked at the content of this budget opening.
You know,
so
we
I
don't
can't
know what
answer
it's
that.
for, but we can look at it when it comes.
Yeah, and we don't have anything here that says what it is, so.
And I haven't seen it, so I don't know.
Okay. All right, it's been moved and seconded that we set a public hearing for a resolution amending the 2022 Cache County budget on June 28, 2022 at 6 p.m., Resolution 2022-17, with clarification from Councilman Borup and Councilwoman Worthen with questions that they've asked. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
I have a question. I
Oh.
didn't mean to make my question a part of the
Oh,
motion.
okay, thank you. I can restate that.
I'll say nay.
Okay,
I want to know what it's for.
I will say nay as well, because I'd like to know what it's for before we set it as well.
okay. So we have we had 5 in favor, correct? And 2 nays.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, we are going to set a public hearing, ordinance 2022-17, the Woodbury rezone. I'm sorry? Zone located at 721 North Highway 23 near Mendon. And we have a little presentation here.
Have that for you in just a moment, thank you.
I'm sorry, I forgot your,
Oh, Tim Watkins, no problem.
okay, Tim. All right, thank you.
Okay, so here's the property kind of in context of the surrounding area. This is right about 10 acres on the money. And you see it's surrounded by A10 zoning, agricultural, residential uses. There is the commercial zoned area up at the intersection, or the intersection of Highway 23 and 30. And I just here show the intersection of 800 North and Highway 23. This is kind of a key factor in terms of staff's recommendation of denial for this rezone request from A10 to RU2. Here's a closer look at the property, fairly narrow and deep. Property frontage is just over 300 feet. And a brief analysis of the surrounding densities of lots and homes built, ranging between 5 acres and 20 acres. Tend to be smaller lots closer to that area, but about the 5 acre size and density on existing legal lots. So there's the 330-foot frontage that I mentioned. And part of the challenge for any potential development related to this rezone request and the intent behind the rezone request to add an additional lot to the west or the left or rear of the property is a spacing standard along state highways of 500 feet for driveway and 600 feet. I'll have to verify those exact distances, but in both cases, a driveway or road spacing is greater than the 300 30 feet available along that frontage, which would be a required spacing distance from that 800 North intersection. And that 800 North intersection aligns with the neighbor's property. So that's a technical challenge that staff shared with the applicant that could not be overcome. And that was discussed at fairly great length at the Planning Commission meeting. One question was asked at the Planning Commission meeting as to whether RU5 was explored for potential rezone. And the challenge there is that some property frontage or right-of-way dedication would be required, which would put it below the 10-acre size, therefore not divisible by 2 in the RU5 zone district. So with those challenges, and also recognizing that RU2 is not in this area, that the nearest application of RU2 is High Country Estates further to the west and not visible on the screen. That subdivision created in 2011 and the rezone to support that subdivision. And noting that the RU2 was adopted and is intended as more adjacent to or near communities and existing development at a community and municipality area. So that is staff's analysis and recommendation in summary for you of denial from A10 to RU2, and we'd be happy at this time to respond to any questions.
Okay, thank you, Tim. Any questions for Tim?
Do we have any from the public?
Yeah.
Public hearing, yeah.
I did not mention the 4 letters of opposition from surrounding neighbors and residents that. We have copies. And you have those copies.
We have those copies. Is there anyone here that's here for the public hearing that would like to address this?
Move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we close the public hearing. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you very much.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
before we get too far beyond, I wasn't anticipating, you and I have talked about these issues before, but I wasn't being anticipated your examples or the questions tonight.
Oh, okay.
I try to make those examples as close to real-life examples as possible, John.
So that second one, I just want to clarify with the moments to think about it. Where you said assessor pays the last amount for the animal shelter. There wouldn't be a violation of the prohibition against transferring funds from one department to another because no funds would have transferred. If an animal shelter plainly has nothing to do with the statutory duties and responsibilities of the assessor, there could be malfeasance there for using county funds for something that your office has nothing to do with. So I would clarify with that.
Can I ask a question on the ordinance the county has? Is that the $1,000 one?
That's the one I was referring to.
So that was one ordinance I was talking about.
$1,000
We're having a
is
public
intra-
hearing. We're having a public hearing.
The
so
$1,000 is interdepartmental. Otherwise, between departments, it has to go to the county council according to ordinance. There's no executive thing about, oh, it's under 1,000, I can sign off on it.
let's close the public hearing.
Okay, before we go on,
I thought we'd ended that.
okay,
Sorry to interject.
we'll close the public hearing first, okay? Okay, all in favor of closing the public hearing? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, very good. Thank you, John. Now, continue on. Any other questions, Paul?
Just do the Woodbright rezone at this point in time. Let's do that.
Okay. Are we okay?
Yes.
All right, very good. Thank you.
We got item 6B.
Okay, let's move to 6B. Bass Cops Grant. Is Sheriff Jensen here? I do not see him.
That was fast.
That was fast.
But you
Okay.
get a grant.
Yeah. All right, then we'll move on to department reports. General plan update. Lauren Ryan.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Thanks for having me. I will be these are getting shorter and shorter as we're getting closer, so I don't want to give away too much before we come to the public hearing. So just leaving you on the edge of your seats here. So as Executive Zook said, we did have our last steering committee meeting, which was super exciting. And they were able to look at the draft of both the general plan and the regional collaboration plan. the cost of services in urban and rural area assessment. We have drafts of them, but they weren't quite far along enough yet to let the steering committee see them. But they had a chance to review the general plan and regional collaboration plan and provide feedback on that. So in terms of tentative dates, we're hoping to bring the drafts to the Planning Commission on July 7th for a workshop with them, and then hold the Planning Commission public hearing on the drafts on July 21st. And so that would mean, you know, depending on how that all goes, coming to the council early, your first meeting in August with the draft. So that is where we are at with our timeline. Super exciting. And so hopefully by the end of this summer, early September, we will have it done.
Very good.
If all goes as planned. So,
Okay.
and
Great.
Any questions, comments for Lauren?
I'll just make one comment. Steep slopes, make sure that's in there. Some people are getting out of town before it happens.
all right, steep slopes. I'll make a note right now.
I think I know why Chris, you know.
I'll do to the steep slopes. So.
Okay, very good.
Great.
Thank you, Lauren. Appreciate that. All right, we have a report from Lee Ivy on the Logan Cache Airport. Mr. Ivy.
One each. One for the front page of the ordinance. Oh, there's two of them.
Oh, there's 2 pages? Oh, there's 2 pages to this.
Yeah, we got that one.
Okay.
Madam Chair and members of the council, it's my pleasure to be with you this evening. I am the representative from the airport, which is kind of a unique department in the fact that airport is jointly owned and operated by both Cache County and Logan City. And it is governed by an authority board, which basically is the only airport in the state of Utah that has an authority board. Most of the boards are advisory boards. So we are a little unique in those respects. So I'm just going to give you a general outline of what is taking place at the airport this year and what we have out there. At the top of the report, you'll notice I have base aircraft. I have to go in and update this information twice a year, and usually we conduct hangar inspections, and that's where we get the information. Then I go in on a FAA website, and I update all this information, and this is how the FAA and the state determine what aircraft is out there and who are registered or not, so they can go after the money aspect. So that's why this is important that I put the base aircraft on the top of the list. We have 149 single-engine aircraft, 17 multi-engine aircraft, 8, now multi meaning twin-engine turboprop type aircraft. We have 8 jet aircraft based at the airport and 11 helicopters, 3 gliders. 5 of those aircraft that are based out there, they probably are not registered because the N numbers were not found in the system. So that's why I included that on there. At the airport, we have a total of 93 hangars. There's 22 being larger than 80 by 80 feet dimension. We consider those in the classification of a corporate hangar, which usually houses a larger aircraft, in particular your jet aircraft or your twin engines. And then we have 59 small hangar units, 10 T hangar units, which are T hangars is just big enough for a small aircraft to fit into. Right now, we have 2 new hangars under construction, and there's plan for 2 more to be built, and basically, we're filled up until we develop some more taxi lanes. We cannot build, we cannot expand any more hangar construction at the airport, so there's going to be a need for future taxi lanes to do that.
Lee, can I was talking to John yesterday, and he said that there's no FAA funding for taxi lanes, and that taxi lane development would have to come from local funds. Is that correct?
Right now, unless we put a public building in an area which would justify the FAA spending money in that area for development. We actually have plans in our master plan, in our capital improvement plan 4 years out to do that very thing, but we have such a demand on hangars that right now we have private entities that are looking to develop and pick up the expense for putting the taxi lane in because we just need the hangar space. So
What do you mean by a public building, like a...
contractors and people who want to go in and fund the costs jointly. We haven't guaranteed that they would be reimbursed for that. I mean, that reimbursement would come from the FAA, and we can't answer to the FAA for them. So right now, we're kind of at a standstill at the hangar construction until we can find a way to develop more taxi lanes. At the airport, we have 2 active landing strips, which means we have a runway in all 4 directions. We have runway 1735 and runway 1028. Now, these numbers are probably foreign to you, but if you just add an extra 0 on the end of each number, and that is the degrees on the compass that they would be coming in from. So 17 is 170 degrees, 35 would be 350 degrees, and 100 degrees and 280 degrees. This is the direction the aircraft come in on those active runways, so we have a runway in all 4 directions. Both of them have recently been reconstructed. Now, most of the airports smaller airports in the state of Utah only have 1 runway, so we're fortunate where we have 2. A few years back, the crosswind runway 1028 was in such bad condition that FAA was going to require us to shut it down. And the state stepped up and paid for milling that up and repaving it, and it was probably the largest state-funded grant for airports. So we're in good shape runway-wise, but there is a section of pavement that for taxiway Charlie, which is our parallel taxiway to 1028, that's still in bad repair, and we're scrambling trying to find funding from the state that we can address that in the future. We do have a non-active runway. Our airport was built prior to World War II, and so it was initially a training facility for the military. And if you look at all the old training facilities that the military built, they were a 3-runway configuration. So this is why we do have an old abandoned runway out there. But we do utilize that abandoned runway, and we lease it out for different needs. So we are gathering some sort of revenue off of it. Recent capital improvement projects at the airport, probably dating back to the last 7 years. We had to install a runway lighting system, a high-intensity lighting system, due to the instrument approach that was put in for runway 17. So that we installed that high-intensity lighting system to replace the medium-intensity system we had, and then we also had to put in new precision approach path indicators, or they're called PAPIs. I tried not to use too many acronyms in my report because FAA and just the aviation language would be too confusing to you. Taxi lane Juliet was built, and also taxi lane India. These were to accommodate the development of hangars, and mainly corporate hangars. So they would be the larger I think most of them were 100 by 100-foot hangars. We reconstructed our main ramp at both ends, the west end and the south end, and we also reconstructed half of Taxiway Charlie. This was all the FAA would allocate for that because it was in conjunction with hangar development. So typically they will not fund taxi lanes and runways that are not our primary runways. So anything to do with the crosswind runway, the state tries to pick up the funding for that. We last year reconstructed runway 1735, which was close to a $4 million project. And then 2 years prior to that was when 1028 was reconstructed with utilizing UDOT funding. And then every year we typically have a crack ceiling and fog seal project. We rotate these projects. And about every 4 years, the pavement out there gets a crack seal and a fog seal application to extend the longevity of those services. 2 years ago, we purchased 10 acres of property at the approach end of runway 35. That's the south end of the airport. Basically, we had to purchase this to protect that approach zone from any future building in that area. And this year, our project is updating our airport master plan, and we haven't got the grant for that yet, but I did get a call from Christy Yoffe with the Denver FAA office telling me that we should expect that within the next 2 weeks. It'll be sent out, and the board member, well, the mayor and the chair of the airport board and David will have to sign that and get it back to the FAA. But it has been approved, and so we should expect to see that grant. After this year, some of our anticipated capital improvement projects would be Phase 2 of Taxi Lane India. This will be for more hangar development, and also the construction of the west section of Taxiway Charlie. We're working with the state to put in a new fuel farm for both avgas and Jet A fuel. The old fuel farm we have now, we're having some problems with it, and we're on the verge of being shut down by EPA. So this is something we're going to have to address, is getting a new fuel farm at the airport. The fuel farm we have now, we own it, but we lease it to Leading Edge Aviation. So this summer, and this is not going to be grant funded, but we're working on trying to augment our automobile parking at the airport. It's real tight quarters out there, and because of the growth of the airport, we really need more parking space for the automobile traffic out there. So you'll probably be hearing more about that in your council meetings. 3 years out, we're looking at building a snow removal equipment storage building, and then the following year purchasing more snow removal equipment. This will be, part of it will be funded through an FAA grant. And then also we are working with Electric Power Systems and Utah State University in developing electric powered aircraft, and so as that is developed, we will need a battery charging facility at the airport. So these are some of the anticipated projects coming up in the next 5 to 7 years. Speaking of USU and their pilot training program, they have, I think, over 400 students now enrolled in that training program, a fleet of over 30 aircraft. They train in both fixed wing and rotorcraft aircraft. And then Leading Edge Aviation also has an average of 45 students at any given time, utilizing nine different aircraft. So we have a lot of student activity going on at the airport. It's busy, and anybody that's out there, you know that we have aircraft in the pattern nonstop, about 5 or 6 aircraft in the pattern doing touch and goes all the time. I know that it's hard to gauge how the airport economically impacts the community, but probably one of the best indicators is the corporate itinerant corporate aircraft that land at the airport on a daily basis, and I would estimate that we have 4 to 6 every day. So that means business coming in, people coming in to conduct business and then flying out. And this is on top of the 6 jet aircraft that are based at the airport, which belongs to corporations based in the valley here. The last page, I know you're all concerned with budgeting, and that's one of your primary focuses coming up. The items that are written in red ink are guesstimates. We don't have a set figure on those, and the others are actually known at this time. So, this year we will bring in about $524 in land leases. Now, we do not own the buildings at the airport. The hangars are privately owned, but they do have to lease the property from us. So these are all property leases.
Do we know how long the average property lease is for?
They are 10-year intervals.
Okay.
They have to be renewed every 10 years. Now, every now and then, if it's a corporation or something like that, and the bank requires that they have a longer lease, that will work with them and maybe extend a 20-year lease. But typically, they are 10-year leases. Fuel forage fee, now this is something we can only estimate because we won't know the exact figures until at the end of the year. But roughly between $17,000 and $20,000 is what we bring in. Basically what this is every gallon of fuel that's sold at the airport, we collect 6 cents per gallon. And then the gas tax refund is a rebate given back to the airport from the state on taxation of fuel. So about $7,000 to $9,000 what we anticipate bringing in from that gas tax refund. Landing fees here again, we really don't know what this is going to be until the football season is over, because the bulk of our landing fees are collected from the 737s that land, that transport the athletic programs. Logan City every year contributes $80,000 to our budget, as does Cache County. So we know those figures for certain, and the other figures are what we are receiving from either FAA or state grants. Now the $416,661 grant is for our master plan update. So this is what the FAA is contributing towards that master plan, and then the state provides a 5% match, $21,539, and then we as the sponsor would also pick up the other 5% on that grant. This is typically how FAA grants go. They pay for 90% of the funding, and the state covers 5%, and the sponsor covers 5%. Now, some people might ask where this money from the FAA comes from. It is money that's generated from aviation-related registration of aircraft, ticket sales for airlines. It's not coming out of the general tax fund that people pay into. These are monies that are generated in aviation-related businesses throughout the country. UDOT has already allocated the grant for $104,000, $401 for, that was a project that was scheduled to be completed last fall, but the weather set in and we couldn't do that. That was the runway 1028 fog seal project. So this is what this grant is for, and we've also already made 2 drawdowns on this grant, paying the contractors. We also have $59,000 grant, which is an FAA grant. It's part of the CARES Act grants. This is our 3rd one that we've received, and this money has to be spent on operational expenses. It can't be used for capital improvements. So that's one of the stipulations for these CARES Act grants. The other items, sundry revenue and interest, these are just, we're basing it off of past years, what we received in miscellaneous items. And then the last one, the $5,000 items that we take in for fire department standbys, basically that's really not something that we keep because we have to go ahead and pay it back out to the fire department to cover their costs. So total revenue is $916,000, 625.26 cents. I based that off of the high end of the unknown items. And then working through the budget this year, I noticed that the county put in a separate line item where it's stated that they estimate that the airport generates probably close to $600,000 in property taxes and sales tax revenue. So this is my report. Is there any questions you have with the airport? So maybe something I didn't cover? Yes, sir.
I'd like to know how the USU school air flight program benefits the airport and everything else. Is there fees or what's coming in from there? I know it benefits the students and everything else, but how does that help in compensating and having the airport out there?
Well, they are probably one of our, when we go back with the property leases, they own 9 hangars out there. So we're getting revenue from property leases from them. We're also getting revenue from fuel fluid sales. A good portion of the fuel that is sold to the university for their training program. Basically, that's, you know, and then providing a service for the community, you know. It is a growing, expanding program within the university. But we're limited on what we can charge revenue. I mean, they're just another tenant out at the airport. So where they do have 9 hangars, they're paying quite a bit in property leasing.
Okay.
You know, out there.
Any other questions for Mr. Ivy? All right, thank you, Lee. Appreciate you the information. Thank you. All right, moving on here. Let's go, no pending action items. Initial proposals for consideration of action. First is ordinance 2022-17, Wood Bay rezone. An ordinance amending the county zoning map by rezoning 10.0 acres from the agricultural A10 zone to the rural 2 RU2 zone. Tim, you have anything to add? Yeah.
Madam, everything I read in there and looked through it, and I thought it was vetted quite thoroughly with the planning and zoning. I looked at that and say I moved that we have to waive the rules on this one. I move that we waive the rules and that we support the planning and zoning for denial of this RU2 zoning.
Second.
Okay, very good.
For discussion, I just wanted to point out in there, it said that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Tim, this is already 10 acres and can't be divided further down, is that correct?
Correct. It was smaller parcels previously, but they were combined. And now at 10 acres, it cannot be subdivided without a rezone.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
All right. Did we have a second on them? Okay, thank you. It's been moved and seconded that we waive the rules and approve denial of ordinance 2022-17 of the Woodbury rezone. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Okay, Resolution 2022-16, a resolution authorizing the Cache County Council to place on the November 8th, 2022 general election ballot a county option sales and use tax referendum before the voters of Cache County to fund recreational facilities, art organizations, parks, and zoological organizations, RAPs, and to establish the time and language of the opinion question. Anybody here to address that?
Basically, this is the required 10-year renewal for RAPs.
Okay, all right, very good.
I have a question on this. I can't remember, but if the council previously talked about possibly changing the amount that goes to the zoo, would that need to be in this particular resolution?
No, this is just a resolution to put it on the ballot.
And then once it's on, we can come back and make the decision of where it goes? That's the question that I have.
That's my understanding.
Okay.
It's going on the ballot, we just don't know what, as far as the details.
Like the
going on ballot.
percentages and stuff. Okay.
Does this include the Eccles Ice Arena thing, David? Do you know?
Well,
Again, those things I think are,
see, they,
details have to be,
right, because they would be very dependent upon what happens with this election, because if
Yeah.
it does not go through, then there's those last 2 years of that interlocal, or that agreement that they have, you know, they hope that it's still funded. But even at that, I think it's, right now, we're looking at it as status quo, getting renewal for another 10 years. But I did have a question as to, and to establish the time and language of the opinion question. What does that mean?
So which ballot is it going to go on?
Okay.
Because you could do it as a special election, it could be the general election, it could be off year. So it's saying, here's the language that we're putting before the voters, and here's the ballot that it's going to be on.
That it won't change what they're voting on. In other words, I don't want to vote for something that we're going to do that and then have something arbitrarily get changed, and because we agreed to establish the time and language of an opinion. You know, that's what.
And in fact, the language is dictated by state statute. If you
Okay.
want to ask about a RAP tax, it says, here's the language on the
Okay.
ballot, and then you
That's
decide
what
which ballot. So it's trying to say, this is a resolution that says, here's the language, here's the ballot that it goes on, and we're approving it to go on there.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I would waive the rules and make a motion to approve Resolution 2022-16, a resolution authorizing the Cache County Council to place on the November 8th ballot the RAPS tax. To make it short.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve Resolution 2022-16 to authorize the Cache County Council to place on the November 8th, 2022 ballot regarding RAPs. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you.
Just for information on that, we'll now, as a county, send a letter to at least Logan City, because municipalities, if the county chose not to review it, could put their own question to their citizens on the ballot. But if the county is doing it, it forecloses the cities. So we'll now give, by statute, we now need to give notice to others that the county is going to do it.
Okay.
That would be interesting, wouldn't it, though?
Yeah.
If they came back and said, no, we don't want to. We know where their application's going.
All right. Resolution 2022-18, a resolution declaring the county's intent to pick up Tier 2 public safety employees' contributions to the Utah State Retirement System, and we have Amy here to address us on that. Thank you.
This may feel a little bit like deja vu because we did bring this before you in 2020 when this was the original time that the URS said that they needed a little bit more money to fund the Tier 2 public safety and firefighter retirement. At that point, it was 2.27%, and the county council elected to pick up 100% of that and not push it off to the employee to pick that up. Because of the way that resolution was written, it's 100% of the 2.27%. If there was ever an increase, it was to come back to the council, and that was the intent of the council when that was passed. So going into effect on July 1st, 2022, that will increase to 2.59%, and the resolution before you is recommending that the county council approve to move that and have the county pay for that for our Tier 2 public safety and firefighter employees. The cost to the county for the remaining year for 2022 would be about $7,200. So going forward, it could be a bit more because we do have our Tier 1s that are retiring out, and as we are hiring, they are Tier 2 employees. So keep that in mind as well. But are there any questions?
I feel for the Tier 2 people.
Thank you. Yes. I'm one of those.
Oh, are you?
But not a public safety or a firefighter, just a different Tier 2.
Well,
Question, but thank you, Amy. You do a great job for the county.
Thank you.
initially, because of the need to incentivize firefighters and
Right.
law enforcement people to come to work for us. So
It's also
I would again waive the rules and make a motion to approve Resolution 2022-18.
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we waive the rules and approve Resolution 2022-18. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. All right. Again, Resolution 2022-19, a resolution amending the Cache County Corporation Personnel Policy and Procedure Manual regarding funeral and bereavement leave. And Amy, thank you.
Still here, yes.
Yes.
So in this year's legislative session, House Bill 449 was passed, which went into effect on May 4th, 2022, stating that if an employee had a miscarriage or a stillborn birth, that entities are required to pay 3 days of bereavement pay or 24 hours of bereavement pay. As we talked about this in our compensation committee and also in the ordinance and policy review board, it's been recommended that we look at a funeral and bereavement leave policy not only for miscarriages and stillborn births, but also for any type of loss that an employee may be having. In the exhibit that's with your resolution is the language of the policy that's being proposed. Just to give you a quick outline and maybe to help you understand if you haven't had a chance to review that, it's allowing for 40 hours for immediate family members, which would include a spouse, a child, a parent, parents-in-law, and grandparents, and then up to 24 hours for other family relations, and that would be based upon the discretion of the department head and how many hours would be needed. It's my recommendation, along with the compensation committee and the ordinance and policy review, that we move this forward. This is a good benefit for our employees and to be able to support them when they're having these trying and difficult times in their lives. So, are there any questions?
Amy, this morning in our committee, there was a few updates. It looks like those were put in here. There was like paragraph 5 changed to paragraph E and a couple things.
It should be changed, I believe. Elisa made those changes and we were able to push that through. So
Okay.
I appreciate her quick response to those changes as well.
For sure. Just wanted to clarify.
Thank you.
And so if passed tonight, it would only give it start. There's no way of making it retroactive back to your May 4th deadline, or?
I don't know of any instances that have happened that would need to be retroactive. However, I would say if there were, that we should be kind to those employees that may have suffered something like that with a miscarriage or a stillborn birth, and that would be taken into consideration on a case-by-case basis.
Thank you.
I might add, that Councilman Erickson said that if we pass this resolution, you will indeed qualify if you pass away to be
This is true.
Unlimited leave.
It's called life insurance.
All right.
I'll make a motion, we approve Resolution 2022-19, amending the personnel policy for an update regarding funeral and bereavement leave as presented.
Waiving the rules.
Waiving the rules. Thank you, Carl. Thank you.
Second.
Okay, it has been, my mind's gone. It's been moved and seconded that we amend the rules and approve Resolution 2022-19, amending the Cache County Corporation Personnel Policy and Procedure Manual regarding funeral and bereavement pay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. All right. Other business, looks like there's a parade this Saturday at 10 o'clock a.m. Anyone going to that at Nibley?
You know, I would love to go, but I have another meeting at 10 o'clock.
And I'm not able to go. Okay, doesn't look like.
We'll go ahead and just not.
Okay,
Just bow out.
thank you. Thank you. All right, let's move on to council member reports. We'll start with Carl.
Well, the only thing I had to report, we talked about already in our executive session, so
Okay, very good.
nothing.
Okay, Councilwoman Worthen.
Okay, I wanted to let the council know, I spoke with the mayor of Hyde Park, mayor of North Logan, 2 North Logan council members, along with Diana Schaefer and our assessor Kathleen Howell last week. North Logan and Hyde Park are concerned, and I'm sure other cities will be too, about the level of tax increase, not based on any tax rate, but because of what's going on in the market. They are concerned because they've had some residents, when they start looking at the numbers, and I apologize I don't have those concrete numbers, have their taxes going up anywhere from $400 to $600. And the reason for it is because commercial tax base, the commercial tax rate hasn't, or the commercial values have not risen as quickly and steadily as the residential. So in order to meet the certified tax rate up here, the piece of the pie, commercial is lower, the residents are higher, and so the residents are bearing the burden of the tax. And they're really, really concerned. Of course, out there, there's a wide amount of misunderstanding of how this tax rate works. And initially, they wanted to blame the county. They thought that we were assessing the properties too high, and we explained, all 3 of us, that no, this is what we have to do by state law, then we can't assess them lower than the market value. It's got to be between 90 and 110% of market value. But they're very concerned about their residents and what this could mean for some of those lower income families, and I just wanted to make you aware of that. They're a step ahead of us because they just got done doing their budgets. We're going to be going into that, but we need to be keenly aware that this is happening in our county. So just want to make you aware.
So they're reporting, their citizens have come to them with concerns, is that what
They've
you're
had some concerns, but also they went in and started looking at numbers just to kind of see as they were figuring out what they needed to set their tax rate at. And that's when they discovered that, you know, as they put in formulas, what it was going to look like for some of their citizens, and they're very concerned.
May I say I have land in other counties and I have got my summary of increase, and it's shocking, but how do you even begin to change that? I mean, it's going to happen to our Cache County residents as well, because mine went up, holy cow. But their value's gone up too, so when they go to sell, they've got a higher value. I don't know how you lessen the impact of that, unless you have a recession or something coming up, which is very valid and possible. And then that will push things back, so.
Thank you.
You're
Thanks,
welcome.
Gene.
Nothing for me.
Okay, Nolan?
I don't know anything, except we ought to keep Chris Harrild after and beat the flip out of him for leaving.
Just kidding, Chris, I'll give you some candy.
I'm not kidding, so.
Oh.
Yeah, so. It's just, we're gonna miss him, so.
Great, more council trauma.
Okay, Gordy?
I guess to go along with what Nolan says, I can't imagine that those two thieves want to get back together. You take that back to your future boss. Okay?
You need that put us together as superheroes.
Let me know when you're hiring. No, I'm very happy for Chris. You know, it's a great opportunity for him to make a career. I think it's a career step up, is what I would call it, and an opportunity. And I just love the heck out of, you know, his future boss. We still give each other a bad time whenever we get together, but we all know what a great employee of the county he was, and likewise with Chris. And they've going to gain a couple of really good people for neighborhood nonprofit, as I say it. Other than that, I don't have anything else.
Thank you, Gordy. Councilman Erickson?
I believe you probably all received that letter from Lewiston City.
Yes.
And I'm hoping that's the kind of things that money was really directed for, but Mayor Hall has petitioned and spoke several times to some people, but it kind of fell on deaf ears. And so whoever's in charge of that budget and putting those ARPA funds together, please consider those kind of civic infrastructures and stuff, because that water improvements, things like that, a lot of that money was specifically for that versus some of the other things I've been seeing happen. So as we advance on that, I'd appreciate that. Then I'd also like to share, I've been receiving several comments and phone calls from concerned patrons that they keep hearing that Cache County is on a fast track, and they say fast track to grow government. They keep hearing about more buildings, bigger, you know, and more programs and all these kind of things, and they would really like to see that we do a little more control on really what the Cache County specifically needs, and that we not chase and inflate issues for, you know, politics and stuff. So
Concur with that 100%.
yeah, and I have had that several times brought to my attention, and so you know, if we're considered conservative Republicans, which we all ran on, we really need to put proof in the pudding on that. So thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to make a couple comments. First of all, Chris, we'll miss you, and thanks for all the good work you've done. I
was going to say, the farewell's not till then for 2 weeks, is it?
Yeah.
This is it. That was good.
No. I want the roast. I want the big, you know.
The big one.
That's been most of the career, so this is not.
I'm sorry.
The other thing I'd like to state is that how much I appreciate all of the council members. It's been a tough year. It's been a tough first 5.5 months. But I'll tell you, I've learned a lot. I have learned a lot from each and every one of you. And I appreciate that. And I appreciate the fact that we're all individuals, that we have different opinions. And it has been said a couple times what's happened with the county council. We always used to get along and everything was great. But you know, I have to again address Chris. I talked to him this afternoon, and he said something that really made me think. He said, you know, there's been a lot of discussion on things that maybe should have been discussed years ago. You know, it's something that maybe we just kind of, you know, we just slid along and just said, okay, that's all good and everything. But with the changes that have been brought to the council and to the executive, I think it's opened up a lot of opportunity, and I'm going to call it opportunity, to really think about a lot of different things and make changes that maybe should have been made long time ago. Is like Gina said in policy and ordinance review meeting. She stated, you know, I want to make it clear that this was something that I was working on even before executives came in and before we had these other changes. And now it's kind of opened up our minds that it's okay to do what we're doing and to, you know, look at things at a different light and to be educated on what we should be doing as a county council and what's the best way to serve the county.
Well stated.
So
Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you, Barbara.
I appreciate each and every one of you. Sorry. But thank you for giving me this opportunity to learn and to grow.
We appreciate you. Thank you, Barbara.
Okay, that said,
I'd cry if you had to work with me too.
yeah, and so any other comments or anything?
I failed to mention that it's really Councilman Burke and I that's talked a little bit about our summer social, summer party, and he has indicated to me that it'd be all right unless he changes his mind right now, that we will, the middle of August, have our summer social. Is it still on?
It is, yeah. I'm the worst party planner you've ever had in your.
Well, you got me to help you, so we're in good shape. I'm thinking it would be somewhere around the third week in August. Let's go ahead and set a
Could we move to
date.
the second week instead?
What's that?
Could we move to the second week or the fourth week?
Are you going to be gone?
Carl's going to be
I'm gonna
gone.
be gone.
I think the reason why we talked about the third one is so that we're not having, it's the off week.
And the fair and everything
We
else.
got the fair.
And are you gonna be gone the whole week of both them?
Gone from the 18th to the 29th, I guess.
And that's in the middle, that'd be the third week.
Yeah.
We want to do it in the last week of that 29th week or the 1st of September, or are you going to be a?
It's Labor Day,
Oh,
but,
that's true.
Labor
That's
Day.
true.
Well, I mean,
First is the employee summer social.
oh,
That's later. It's later this year.
Oh, that is later.
September 1st is.
Yeah, we usually do it in July.
I mean,
Think
go
the-
ahead with it.
The only thing that we gotta do it is if you're gonna do a shrimp boil, you've gotta have fresh corn on the cob. And, earlier it's not there and later it's froze, so.
We want to do it on Friday.
The 26th of August.
but you'll still be gone through the 29th, right, Carl?
What about the 5th of August? What about that first week? Will you have corn by then?
Did you get it in the ground in time?
We always shoot for the 24th.
I just get it from the funny farm on the corner there by Ted's.
That sounds legit.
Well, we all know that if he doesn't have it, they definitely won't have it over the hill.
Well, I'll ask if we can get corn, we'll go the 5th, because we don't want to miss out on Carl.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah, I was gonna say,
Life of the party,
I'm
so.
the least thing you should worry about. Corn's more important than I am.
Well, I'll call my supplier. It's another funny farm too.
Hey, Carl, was your wife going with you?
Yes, she is.
Then we gotta change it.
Okay, well, we'll look at the corn and
Is
get.
the 5th as good as maybe the 22nd?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, let's change it till then.
August 5th, all right. Okay, very
If you don't
good.
come, Carl, we're gonna be pretty discouraged.
We'll take you down.
Okay.
You better not come back, 'cause
No.
I've seen those kind of parties that change the date and everything, just so a person can be there and then they don't even come.
The pressure's on. Pressure's on.
All right, any other thing? All right.